In the beginning of the movie, we see William Somerset, who is a detective and will retire in a week. Detective David Mills begins working with him. The two detectives don't really see eye to eye. When Mills and Somerset arrive at the scene, an obese man is lying dead at the table. They are still not sure if it was a murder or not. When they notice that his legs and hands are tied with barbed wire, they are convinced that it was not a natural death. As Somerset meticulously continues to examine the body, Mills cannot stop babbling. Somerset tells Detective Mills to interview the neighbors while he works, implying that he is a nuisance. Later, as they drive, Mills expresses his dissatisfaction that Somerset had ordered him to go door to door. He feels that he is not appreciated and wants to be taken more seriously. According to the forensic examination, it is proven that the obese man was force-fed and died of overeating when the killer kicked him in the stomach, which burst. Somerset says that the obese man was fed for 12 hours, and it makes no sense to waste so much time killing someone. He is sure there will be a series of murders. The captain expresses his doubts, he just believes that someone wanted to torture the fat man. Somerset also thinks that this is not a good first assignment for Mills. The captain agrees with Somerset and reassigns Mills. In the morning, when the building is flooded with reporters, an infamous defense attorney is murdered, and his wife's picture has glasses painted on it. The captain enters and informs Somerset of the recent murder. He does not want Somerset to retire. He also says that plastic parts were found in the corpse of the fat man and fed to him. This information makes Somerset curious. Somerset returns to the first crime scene, finds out where the plastic pieces came from, and determines that the refrigerator has been moved. On the wall behind it, there is a note from the killer. Next to the word gluttony written in grease. He shows the captain the note. Somerset thus proves that this is only the beginning, for there are 7 deadly sins: gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, pride, lust, and envy. He refuses to get involved in this because he is retiring in 5 days. At night, he visits the library and looks for books on the 7 deadly sins, while Mills takes a closer look at the photos of the crime scenes. Somerset writes a list for him and even makes copies of the most important clues. He leaves a letter with clues on Mills's desk. Mills moves into Somerset's office, and the two will work side by side until Somerset retires. The phone rings. Mills's wife, Tracy, wants to speak to Somerset. She invites him to dinner tonight. At dinner, the conversation shifts to marriage. Tracy does not understand why Somerset isn't married. Mills and Somerset agree that he is simply an unlikable person. The whole apartment starts to shake, and it turns out that it is above the subway. Then Somerset could no longer keep his laughter to himself. After dinner, Somerset and Mills talk about the case. Mills hands him a picture of a scale with a pound of flesh that the defense attorney had to cut off of himself and a note the killer had left. They are stumped as to how the killer got in and out without leaving any evidence. Somerset notes that there is one thing they need to find and focus on. That's when Mills points out that the picture of the attorney's wife had glasses drawn on it. Somerset believes she either saw something or did not have the opportunity to do so yet, but this is their clue. Together, they go to the attorney's wife and ask her about anything she notices about the pictures that is strange or out of place. She realizes that the painting in her husband's office is upside down. After examining the painting, they found nothing. When Mills starts to believe the killer is playing with them, Somerset finds fingerprints on the wall where it was hung. After contacting the fingerprint lab, they are shocked to see that the fingerprints are arranged. While waiting for the fingerprints to match with someone, they discuss the importance of their job in the lobby. There's a match on the fingerprints, but according to Somerset, it's not their suspect. Their killer has more purpose than just being someone with mental illness. Accompanied by a SWAT team, they break into the apartment of the man whose fingerprints match. He is the third victim, strapped to his own bed. When the detectives look at the photos the killer took, they find out that the man has been lying there for an entire year. On closer inspection, it turns out that he is still alive. A news photographer arrives shortly thereafter, and Mills even wonders how they got here so quickly and shoos him away. News stations pay police to get information on hot cases. According to the doctor, he must have been in all kinds of pain until his arrival at the hospital. At night, Tracy calls Somerset and asks for a meeting. He is the only person she knows in this town, and she just wants to talk to someone. In the morning, they meet for dinner. Tracy is concerned about living conditions and doesn't want to raise her child here. Somerset is not the right man for the job, but he tells her about the relationship he once had and gives her good advice. Back in the office, Mills is restless and worried about all the people out there. Somerset does not think the killer is crazy. He thinks their serial killer is methodical and exacting. Mills disagrees and says something about a library card, which gives Somerset an idea. They visit the library, thinking that the killer must have read one of these books. Somerset writes down the names of all of them on the list of the 7 deadly sins. With Mills's money, Somerset pays a man from the FBI to give him information on people who have borrowed the books. Mills is not amused by this because it is illegal. They get their list and go through it. They find one name that stands out, John. Mills is still upset when they arrive at John's door, not knowing what they are going to say to him. They notice a man standing with groceries in hand who suddenly pulls out a gun and starts shooting. No one is hurt, but a chase ensues inside and outside the building. Eventually, the suspect manages to knock Mills down, and he loses his gun. The suspect holds him at gunpoint. The suspect leaves him alone and flees the scene. Back at John's door, Mills argues with Somerset about whether or not to enter by force. Somerset tries to explain to Mills that they do not have a warrant and have no reason to be here because their information is illegal, but he is so angry that he breaks down the door. Mills hired a bum to tell the officers that she found the guy suspicious and called the detectives. The detectives take a walk through John's apartment. Somerset even finds the spaghetti in cans and a hand used for fingerprints on a glass shelf. The last shelf contains a portrait of a woman. Mills discovers several photos of victims while Somerset reads the killer's diaries and is suddenly called out by his partner. It turns out that the news photographer was their serial killer. There's even another problem, their forensics team cannot find any fingerprints. While Somerset is quite relaxed and still reading the diaries, Mills again shows his nervous nature. Suddenly, John's phone rings. It is the suspect himself. He affirms his admiration for law enforcement agents and even apologizes to Mills for hurting him during the chase. Because of these events, he had to move up his schedule and assure them that they were in for a surprise. The detectives get a tip from an SM shop and get a photo of something John had ordered to be custom-made. That's when they get word that a killing has occurred, and they head to the next crime scene. In the next crime scene, it's the sin of lust. The blonde is dead, and a man is sitting. At the station, while Mills is questioning the owner of the brothel, Somerset talks to the man found at the scene. He is panting and says that John forced him to do it at gunpoint. Somerset takes a photo of the custom-made strap-on John ordered. At the bar, the detectives talk about how to catch the killer. A philosophical conversation develops about the purpose of their work. At home, Somerset is restless, thinking about what Mills said. The detectives arrive at their next crime scene. It is the sin of pride. The woman had 2 choices, call for help and be disfigured, or take the pills and get out of her misery. On the way back to their office, Somerset says he wants to stay on duty for a few more days until they catch the killer, or if John gets to the 7th sin, this case will probably never be solved. While the two are in the precinct, John follows them and catches the detective's attention. John speaks calmly with blood smeared on his shirt, while Mills shouts at him and makes him get on the ground. A member of the team puts him in handcuffs. While the suspect is talking to his lawyer, the detectives argue about his reasons for turning himself in. They never found fingerprints because he had cut off his finger skin. He has no employment history or bank records. The only thing they know about John is that he is wealthy and well-educated. John's lawyer negotiates with law enforcement officials. There are 2 more hidden bodies. John agrees to take them to the bodies at 6 p.m. but only the detectives because he admires them. He threatens the detectives that he will plead insanity if they do not take him up on the offer. Otherwise, he will not only show them the bodies but also write a full confession and plead guilty. The detectives agree to see it through. The detectives wear wire and armor. The car in which 3 of them are driving is escorted by a helicopter. During the ride, Mills and Somerset talk with John. Somerset tries to find out more about John, but he says it's irrelevant. Mills still has doubts about whether or not he really wants to be led to the bodies. John enlightens him about his motives and promises Mills he will find answers in the last act of his work. He doesn't deny that he has the pleasure of turning every sin against the sinner, but he is not insane. John loses his temper for the first time when Mills believes that the victims were innocent. John says they will be remembered, but the only reason he is here is because he wanted to be caught. The only reason Mills is here is because he spared his life, and John wants him to remember that for the rest of his life, or should he say for the rest of the life he allows him to have. According to John, they arrived at their destination. There is almost nothing there except high-voltage towers, a broken car, and an old trailer. Because of the power lines, the helicopters cannot follow them into the area. Mills gets Doe out of the car, and cuffed, he leads the armored detectives into the field. A van appears suddenly. That's why Somerset ran to intercept it. The van stops, and the driver gets out of it. He is a delivery guy and brings a package for Detective Mills. Somerset sends the driver away. He opens the box with his knife and is frightened by the contents. John starts talking about his admiration for Mills again. For his simple life and his pretty wife, Tracy. Mills is confused. John admits that he visited Tracy this morning and tried to play husband. It did not work, so he took a souvenir. Meanwhile, Somerset runs back to them and shouts to Mills to throw away his gun, who is still confused and wants to know what's going on and what's in the box. John admits that he too is a sinner, and his sin is envy of Mills's ordinary life. Mills is angry but continues to doubt John's words. Somerset explains that John's intention is to be killed by Mills. John wants Mills to seek vengeance on him and become the sin of wrath. John further upsets him by saying that his wife begged for her life and the life of their baby. Mills begins to cry, still with the gun in his hand. It turns out that Mills didn't know his wife was pregnant. Somerset asks for the gun again, explaining that John can only win if Mills shoots him. In a moment of despair and anger, Mills shoots John. More than once, ultimately completing Doe's master plan. Mills sits in the back of a police car, and the captain says he will be taken care of. Hemingway once wrote that the world is a fine place and worth fighting for. Somerset agrees with the second part. Subscribe to my channel and comment down below saying I subscribed. Turn on notifications. Like the video to help the channel grow. Thanks for watching.